Hi there. I spent the last 3 hours scrolling through Zillow, which, by the way, is the worst hobby a broke guy like me can pick up. And I found something that made me laugh so hard I almost spit out my coffee. There's a shed, not a house, not even a garage, a shed, like the thing you keep a lawnmower in. Someone's listing it on Zillow for $500,000, and you know what the craziest part is? It might actually sell. This is where we're at in America in 2026, and I'm going to break down exactly how we got here and what it means for your wallet. Buckle up. The reality check: why housing is breaking America's brain. Here's the thing about the housing market, and I'm going to be straight with you. This isn't academic crap. It's personal. It hits you where it counts in your monthly payments. You wake up, you work 40 hours a week, maybe more if you're grinding like I am, and the biggest dream you're supposed to chase is owning a piece of ground with a roof over it. Simple, right? Except it's not. Not anymore. Not in 2026. According to the latest data, the typical first-time home buyer in America is now 40 years old. 40. You know what that means? Kids are grown, your back hurts more than your optimism, and you're still priced out of the market. Back in 2015, that average was 32. In just a decade, we've added 8 years to the age of someone buying their first home. 8 years of apartment living. 8 years of paying somebody else's mortgage. 8 years of hoping. That's not a statistic. That's a reality that hits harder than any economic chart can. Explain. And here's where I start to lose it. First-time buyers now represent only 21% of home sales. That's a record low since they started tracking this stuff in 1981. Meanwhile, repeat buyers, people who already own homes, who locked in mortgages at 3.5% 5 years ago, they're sitting pretty. They're not moving. They're locked in. The irony? That lock-in, that thing that feels comfortable to them, is literally starving the market of inventory and making everything worse for everyone else. Trying to get in, it's like watching people hoard supplies while a shortage happens. So what's the big squeeze here? Supply and demand, but not in the way you think. Demand isn't exactly on fire. After getting skull-kicked by 6.5% mortgage rates in 2025, a lot of people just gave up. Home sales are down about 20% from before the pandemic. But here's the kicker. Supply is even worse. There's a housing shortage estimated at somewhere between 2.8 and 4.7 million homes. That's not a shortage. That's a crisis pretending to be a market. The diagnosis: how the Fed's rate hikes broke everything and why lower. Earners got crushed first. Let me explain what happened, because you gotta understand this stuff to not feel like you're going insane when you see prices. 5 years ago, the Federal Reserve said, hey, inflation is out of control, so we're going to make borrowing really expensive to cool things down. They did this by raising interest rates. Fair game. But here's what they didn't account for. Housing isn't like buying a TV that you can just decide not to buy. People need to live somewhere. So when mortgage rates went from 3% to 6.5%, you didn't see demand disappear. You saw it get crushed into a smaller slice of the population. The rich people, they paid cash. The middle class, they swallowed the hit. The poor, they got locked out completely. A median home in America runs about $410,000 now. That's up roughly $100,000 since 2019. And those mortgage rates I mentioned, they make that math brutal. If you put down 10%, and that's about the average for first-time buyers, you're looking at a loan of about $370,000. Wait, 6.3%, that's a monthly payment around $2,240. Add property taxes, insurance, and HOA fees, and you're creeping toward $3,000 a month just for the roof over your head. Now here's where I get mad on behalf of everyone reading this. The median household income in America is about $85,000. That means a household bringing in roughly $7,000 a month before taxes is supposed to spend 30% of that just on housing. That's DOE, Department of Housing and Urban Development definition of affordable. But it's not. It can't be. Because you gotta eat. You gotta pay insurance on a car. To get to work. You gotta exist. This is where the lock-in effect comes in, and this is where it gets really absurd. About 80% of homeowners in America have mortgage rates under 6%. A huge chunk locked in 3.5% deals during the pandemic when the Fed was basically free money. Stupid. These people they're not moving. They can't. Why would you sell your house with a 3.5% mortgage and go buy something new at 6.5%? You'd be looking at an extra $500 to $1,000 a month. That's not financial freedom, that's financial prison. So what happens? Fewer homes come on the market, inventory stays strangled, prices stay up, and the people trying to get their first foot in the door, people who don't have a low-rate mortgage to abandon, they're screwed. They're competing in a market with barely anything available, everything priced like it's made of gold, and mortgage rates that make the math impossible. The builders, they're not helping. They've been building bigger, fancier homes for decades. 4-bedroom houses make up half of new construction now compared to 1 in 5 back in the 70s. Why? Because a 4-bedroom in a fancy suburb makes more profit than a starter home. Nobody's making money on the bottom rung of the ladder, so nobody's building there. That's a choice, and America's making it every single day. The psychology, why everyone's pretending their house is worth more than it is. Here's something that really messes with my head, and I want you to understand this because it explains so much of the weirdness in the market. People lie about their houses. Not intentionally. Worse than that, they believe their own lies. There's actual research on this, and it's fascinating in a depressing way. When homeowners put their house on the market, they tend to list it higher than comparable homes sold nearby. Why? Because they paid more for it. They think it's worth what they paid. And if the market disagrees, they wait. They hold firm. They convince themselves the market will catch up instead of adjusting their expectations. Psychologists call this reference dependence and loss aversion, but I call it, I spent $200,000 on this house, so I'm damn well not losing money on it. The research shows that the fear of losing money is 2.5 times stronger than the pleasure of making money. So when someone sees their home's value stalling, they'd rather keep it off the market entirely than accept a price slightly below what they paid. This cascades into a market that's not liquid. That means homes don't move, prices don't adjust, and everything gets stuck. We had one study showing that this behavioral thing kept 1.7 million potential home sales from happening between 2022 and 2024. 1.7 million. Those homes didn't move. Inventory didn't increase. The problem got worse. And you know what's really messed up? It works because of scarcity. Those sellers who do list actually get good prices. The fact that nothing's on the market makes what is there more valuable? It's like hoarding, but legal and with a real estate license. The wealthy people who can afford to wait get rewarded. Everyone else waits longer for a dream that keeps moving further away. Then there's the Zillow problem. I got to talk about Zillow for a second because this is some wild stuff. Zillow has this thing called a Zestimate. Basically, their algorithms guess at what your home is worth. And it's garbage. It's just trash. Straight up. But here's what's genius and terrible. When someone lists their house high, the Zestimate sometimes jumps to match it. The seller then shows potential buyers, look, Zillow says my house is worth this much. It's circular logic. The algorithm is partly trained on listing prices, which are partly influenced by the algorithm itself. It's like everyone's playing with the same set of inflated numbers and calling it evidence. I found examples where Zillow suddenly jumped a home's value by $1 million when it hit the market, even though nothing actually changed. That's not appraisal. That's marketing. It creates a psychological anchor that messes with what people think their home should sell for. The current state 2026 and the slight breather. Don't get excited. Okay, so here's where things get slightly less terrible, but don't get too excited because we're still in a bad spot. In 2026, mortgage rates are forecast to average around 6.3%, down from 6.6 in 2025. That's not much, but it helps. Combined with wages growing faster than home prices for the first time in years, affordability is supposed to improve modestly. The real estate industry is projecting that mortgage payments will fall about 1.3% year over year, which would be the first decline since 2020. And you know what that means? It means monthly payments stay roughly the same, not that they get better. Because rents are going up, property taxes are going up, and insurance, oh man, insurance is going absolutely bonkers. Insurance premiums have exploded in the last few years, and if you own a home and haven't seen your insurance bill spike, you're lucky or you're not looking at the numbers. The forecast is that affordability will dip slightly below 30% of median income for the first time since 2022. But remember, that's just the mortgage payment. Add everything else, and most people are still above that threshold. We're not fixing anything. We're just moving the needle a bit. Inventory is supposed to tick up too, about 20% higher than last year, but we're still short about 2.8 to 4.7 million homes depending on which economist you ask. Some say it'll take 7.5 years to close that gap if building continues at current rates. Other projections say 10 years. Either way, we're talking about a decade of the shortage we're in now. The Fed's rate cuts, the mixed blessing that might not actually bless anything. Here's where it gets interesting and frustrating at the same time. The Fed started cutting interest rates in late 2025 because the economy showed some cracks. They're basically saying, okay, we overcorrected with those rate hikes, so we're backing off. Lower Fed rates usually mean lower mortgage rates. But that's not a lock. Mortgage rates are set by bond markets, not the Fed directly. So theoretically, we could see rates stay elevated even if the Fed keeps cutting, or we could see them drop if the bond market thinks the economy is heading for trouble. The bank guys are saying we'll probably see rates around 6% to 6.7% for most of 2026. So we're not going back to 3% mortgage rates, no. Matter what anyone promises you, if you hear a politician say they're going to get rates back to 3%, they're either lying or they want a recession so bad that you'll be more worried about your job than your mortgage rate. One thing the Fed cutting rates will do is help builders a little bit. They borrow money to build homes, and lower Fed rates mean lower construction financing costs. That might nudge supply up a touch. But with labor shortages, tariff concerns, and material costs still elevated, nobody's expecting a boom. We're talking about a modest increase. The truth nobody wants to say, the housing market won't fix itself. Let me be clear about something. There's no easy fix. Here, politicians on both sides are talking about solutions. You've got YIMBY people, that's yes in my backyard for those not hip to the acronym, pushing for less restrictive zoning so people can build more density. You've got people talking about manufactured housing. Some folks are even floating the idea of a 50-year mortgage because a 30-year doesn't cover enough loans at these prices. Here's my take. A 50-year mortgage isn't a solution. It's a symptom. You know what it means? It means we've given up on homes being affordable in any traditional sense. It means we're just extending the payment period to make people feel like they can afford something they actually can't. It's financial manipulation disguised as help. The real solution is building a lot more homes, especially cheaper ones. Not because the market demands it, but because people need somewhere to live. That means fighting zoning laws that prevent density. It means making it easier to build smaller, simpler homes. It means accepting that not every new home needs 4 bedrooms and granite countertops, but that's not profitable for developers, so it's not happening as fast as it needs to. And that's the real problem. All right, so what do you actually do about this? How do you navigate a market that's broken and will take years to even partially unfree? Here's what I'm trying to do, and what I think makes sense if you're in a similar boat. Step 1, get brutally honest about your timeline. If you're not staying in one place for at least 5 to 7 years, don't buy. Seriously. Renting is still cheaper in 49 of 50 major metros. The one exception is Pittsburgh. And yeah, that's wild. But the reality is that for most people in most places, the monthly cost of owning is pretty close to renting. The difference is that owning builds equity over time. But if you're not there long enough for that equity to matter, if you factor in closing costs, selling costs, and all the stuff that goes into a transaction, renting actually wins in the short term. So if your job is shaky, if you might move for a relationship, if you're not sure where you want to be, keep renting. It's not throwing money away. It's buying flexibility which has genuine value. Stop letting people make you feel bad about it. Step 2. If you're going to buy, get your down payment ducks in a row. The average first-time buyers putting down about 10%. That's roughly what you need to be competitive, though there are programs that let you go lower. FHA loans go down to 3.5%. VA loans for veterans are often 0 down. There's a California program called California Dream 4. All that offers up to 20% assistance. But here's the thing. Most people don't know about these programs, and they're often competitive. According to the data, there are over 2,600 down payment assistance programs nationwide, and they average about $18,000 in help. But you gotta apply. Most people don't. My suggestion, start looking at your state and local options in Q1 2026. That's when a lot of programs refresh their budgets for the year. You might find grant money, actual free money that doesn't require repayment, sitting there waiting for someone to apply for it. That's not a scam. That's literally just policy that people are sleeping on. Also, get your credit clean. The better your credit score, the better your rate. A few months of paying down debt or disputing bogus stuff on your credit report could save you tens of thousands over the life of a mortgage. That's not sexy, but it's true. Step 3. Do the math, but do it realistically. Get a rent versus buy. Calculator online. Plug in real numbers from your area. Don't assume appreciation or rate drops that haven't happened. Use today's rates, today's prices, and today's rents. See where the break-even point is. In most markets, right? Now, owning becomes cheaper than renting somewhere between year 3 and year 7, assuming you stay put. That's your benchmark. If you're planning to move sooner, don't buy. If you're planning to stay longer, the math starts to favor ownership pretty clearly. And be real about maintenance. Homeowners should budget roughly 1% of their home's value annually for repairs and upkeep. So on a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 a year. Some years it's nothing. Other years your roof fails and it's $20,000. Budget conservatively. Step 4. Don't chase the dream. Chase the logic. This is where I'm going to get a little philosophical, but hear me out. The American dream of homeownership is real and powerful, but it's also been weaponized to make people feel like failures if they're not buying. We've made homeownership into this moral thing, like renting means you're not an adult or you're not serious about life. That's garbage. Right now, homeownership is a financial move, not a moral statement. Sometimes the math says buy. Sometimes it says rent. Both are okay. Don't buy a house because you're supposed to. Buy one because the numbers work and you're ready to stay put. And don't buy because you're afraid of missing out. FOMO is real. I feel it too, but FOMO has bankrupted way more people than caution ever has. Step 5. If you do buy, plan for the lock-in. Here's something I haven't talked about enough. If you buy today at 6.3% and rates drop to 4% in a few years, you're probably going to want to refinance. The banks are already expecting this. They're predicting a 30% jump in refinances in 2026 as people who bought recently at higher rates look to cash in on lower ones. So when you're thinking about buying, factor in the possibility that you might refinance in 5 or 7 years if rates drop. That means keeping closing costs in mind and not stretching yourself so thin that a refinance isn't possible. If you're straining every muscle to afford a house at today's rate, you won't be able to refinance cleanly if you get a shot. Also, understand that when you buy, you're probably going to be in that house for a long time. We're talking a decade or more. The lock-in effect is real for you just like it is for everyone else. Don't underestimate what that means psychologically. Selling a home is stressful, expensive, and emotionally complicated. Make sure you can live with that commitment. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The housing market in 2026 is better than it was in 2024, but it's still brutal. We're not returning to a market where a regular person can buy their first home at 30 with a reasonable down payment and a manageable payment. That ship sailed. The housing shortage will take years to fix. Interest rates aren't going to drop dramatically, and home prices aren't falling. What might happen is a gentle improvement. Rates stabilize around 6%. Wages grow faster than prices. Inventory ticks up a bit. Affordability improves modestly. That doesn't fix the crisis. It just makes it slightly less severe. For someone my age, under 40, working a regular job, living paycheck to paycheck like most Americans, the path to homeownership is harder and longer than it was for our parents. That's just the truth. The wealth gap between renters and owners is at an all-time high. We're creating a two-tier society. People with home equity who are doing fine and everyone else who's trapped in the rental market watching prices climb. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. You can educate yourself. You can do the math. You can take advantage of programs that exist. You can plan long-term instead of getting caught up in short-term panic. And if homeownership doesn't make sense for you right now, that's not a failure. That's you being smart about money. The shed that costs $500,000 is a symptom of a market gone haywire. But understanding why that's possible, why supply and demand have gotten so distorted, why lock-in effects are keeping inventory strangled, why behavioral psychology makes sellers irrational, and why the Fed's interest rate decisions created this cascade of problems. That understanding is the first step to not getting totally demolished by a market that doesn't have your back. So yeah, That's the situation. It sucks. But you're not alone in thinking so, and knowing what's actually happening is better than just feeling broke and confused.